Alright guys, welcome back to Formula 1 news. The top 10 highest paid Formula 1 drivers has been revealed, and for the first time since 2013, Lewis Hamilton is not topping the list. After some discussions from Helmut Marko and Red Bull over the last few years about potentially a driver salary cap, they're not necessarily in line with that after Verstappen's performance over the last couple of seasons. Hit the like button if you enjoy, subscribe if you are new as always, I'd greatly appreciate it. Verstappen has confirmed before this was talked about, he will use the number 1 on his car for as long as he is world champion, and he is also now number 1 in the drivers' earnings rankings. And this goes as follows. So, well, we'll see these numbers here in a second. These were the numbers talked about by Spot Track or whatever earlier this season, apparently. And these were the numbers for this year's grid. This is clearly, very wrong, to be honest, looking at the numbers now. The order is not too bad, to be honest. But, yeah, I don't know where these guys got these numbers from. But, yeah, take it with a grain of salt, because these are the numbers according to Spot Track earlier this season back in September. They're clearly very different to what Forbes have to say. The Forbes numbers to me seem more accurate, and they probably have better sources than I think this was put out on The Sun. So yeah, probably not ideal. These are the list of the top 10 then. This is just the raw numbers, but we shall see here how they got to this discussion. So here's the article here on Forbes, and yeah, Max Verstappen zooms past Lewis Hamilton. So Verstappen is now topping the list with a $60 million yearly salary. Probably, I don't know what the highest salary ever is, but surely with inflation and stuff, this is probably the highest ever salary. 40 million base salary, 20 million in bonuses. I'm sure winning the championship helped him a fair bit with that as well. But yeah, 40 mil base, not bad. Hamilton has been the top guy for the last pretty much almost a decade, really. 55 straight million over at Mercedes. I don't know what their bonus structure is for Mercedes or exactly how that works. Maybe Hamilton, if he won the championship, he would have been topping the list on the bonuses, but he gets 55 mil. Yeah, it's crazy the amount of money these lads earn, to be honest. Not really a surprise, but it's still big cash, right? So number 3 is Fernando Alonso, right? So, yeah, Verstappen, Hamilton, Alonso, arguably that's an understandable top 3 in terms of raw driver ability, and the more world championships you win, the higher salary you can command. But yeah, 30 mil for Alonso kind of shows why Alpine were not so sad to get rid of him, to be honest, right? I wonder what Aston Martin will be paying him to go over there, because maybe he even took a pay cut to go to Aston Martin, but didn't want to get disrespected by Alpine any longer. Perez is 4th, 26 million. This is quite interesting just because, the gap in quality, you could argue, in terms of performances this season between Perez and Verstappen has been pretty large. In terms of salary, he gets 10 million base, but 16 million bonuses, probably because they won the constructors. I'm sure that was pretty handy for his pockets, and clearly Red Bull do things on a more bonus-based discussion than some of the other teams do. But yeah, 26 mil for Perez, 4th highest paid driver. That makes Red Bull by far the biggest spenders in terms of driver salary this past season. Leclerc is 5th, 23 mil, 12 mil salary, 11 mil bonuses. Then Vettel, 17 million in his final year, so I guess that makes sense. I wonder if this is a kind of similar contract to what Alonso might get going there for the upcoming season. So he's number 6th, tied with Daniel Ricciardo, also 17 million, right? So interesting that he was earning more than Lando Norris was this past season, despite the gap in performance. Look, it makes sense that not exactly the older you are, but the more experienced you are, the more races that you have won, the bigger brand that you have, it kind of aligns with stuff. Interesting, you got some bonuses. I wonder where the bonuses came from, to be honest with Ricciardo, because not like he, performed that well to earn them maybe, but obviously maybe just the bonuses happen regardless. Carlos Sainz then here in number 8, 8 mil salary, 7 million bonuses, so 15 million total. Lando Norris only 11 million, so a few million shy of what happened for Daniel Ricciardo. But yeah, he gets much more bonus than Ricciardo did, probably based on performance, but his salary was significantly lower. And then 10th is George Russell, 10 million. So I guess, look, at the end of the day, Russell's just come into Mercedes. People would say, okay, they're lowballing him, only 10 million. Yeah, he's been super lowballed, right? But look, in terms of bonuses, he made 70% of his salary here pure bonus, because he obviously killed it this year compared to, you could argue, expectations. Coming in his first season in an actual competitive car up against 7-time world champion. Great performance from Russell, and probably next year it goes up or whatever, or the bonus structure changes, I don't know. But yeah, George Russell's base salary 3 mil, Hamilton's base salary 55 mil. That is a pretty big discrepancy between the two drivers. That is all we get. Those are the top 10. They've done the methodology, analyzing, stuff like this. Probably there's a decent amount of validity to this. So let's see what it looks like, right, in terms of when you put them in order. Verstappen and Hamilton, it's kind of crazy if you add these two numbers up, what it means compared to the rest of the field. And then, yeah, Hamilton has slipped to 2nd place for the first time since 2013. So yeah, what do you guys think? Does Verstappen deserve to be the highest paid driver? 60 million, dollars a year. Pretty crazy stuff. Hamilton right behind him, 55. And then the rest of the grid going down further. But it is interesting just from Verstappen and Red Bull's perspective, because, look, this money doesn't get included included in the cost cap, for example. The drivers are excluded, I think, from the cost cap salary discussions, as are the top 3 paid employees. And then after that, every other piece of salary is included in the budget cap the teams have to meet. So it's not exactly like there is an issue paying Verstappen this much, and obviously on his performances he deserves it, but it's interesting based on the last few years, because for the last decades, often Red Bull have said, oh, you know, they're paying Hamilton too much, like they shouldn't be allowed to pay him this much money and this type of stuff. Whereas now it's Red Bull who are the team that are paying the most salary pretty much hands down, right? And if you look at the difference in earnings, some of the biggest between Hamilton and Russell, Verstappen and Perez, and Leclerc and Sainz, about 10 million between them. And now Red Bull, so what was Mercedes, 55 plus 10 to 65 million a year. Red Bull now play 86 million per season to their drivers, 60 mil for Verstappen, 26 mil for Perez. Not a bad paycheck, it's got to be said, but still, when you look at it, comparing Verstappen to the others, and I think on that graphic we saw earlier, Tsunoda was on like 600,000 a year, like, you know, obviously has quite a big discrepancy between the grids. And this I thought was kind of crazy as well. Verstappen and Hamilton, you combine their annual earnings, 115 mil. The next 5 drivers on the list only total 113 mil. Just goes to show how much these guys command, of course for good reason. Funny though, in a way, just looking back at this, so this is from last year, 2021, but you know, this has been talked about for a little bit of time by Helmut Marko and others, especially even from the Red Bull camp, saying, oh, you know, Hamilton, he's too expensive, you shouldn't be able to pay him this much money, Mercedes shouldn't be able to afford this, they should have to, you know, other teams should be able to afford the same salary as Hamilton, or whatever the implication was. But yeah, kind of funny in a way that 18 months later, it's now Red Bull that are by far and away the biggest spenders here, but understandable given the quality of their drivers. But yeah, I wonder what Helmut Marko thinks about paying Verstappen 60 million a year. He probably doesn't mind too much as long as Verstappen wins another good few world titles. Continuing on this drama, just wanted to mention a couple of things before we close out the video. Firstly, here from Alpine. So we know all the drama with Alpine. They lost Alonso, they now lost Piastri, went to McLaren, of course, all that drama. Now they've got Gasly instead. Now Otmar has kind of said here that, you know what, Gasly is actually the better choice all along. It's kind of like one of these things, they lose Piastri and they're like, yeah, we didn't want him anyway, he's not even very quick at all. So, you know, clearly they did want Piastri, but they've got Gasly now instead. And obviously that's a pretty good fit for them theoretically. The French team, it could get spicy, but it is what it is. And look, Gasly will be expected to perform better than Piastri will in his first season. More experience in an F1 car, should have faster pace in the first season, and he reckons that it actually worked in their favour losing Piastri and getting Gasly instead, which might be true, but I mean, look, still, it's kind of obvious that he wouldn't be saying this if they hadn't lost Piastri. It would have said he was their best possible chance after investing a lot into him over the last few years. And even, you know, Otmar said on Piastri, basically just questioned Piastri's integrity, saying, yeah, we gave all this time and money and commitment to his development, and then he leaves us for McLaren. That's kind of, you know, questioning Piastri's integrity. And then Zach Brown from McLaren said about these comments, the way Otmar called his integrity into question, I thought this was very inaccurate and unfair, especially coming from Otmar, because arguably Otmar himself does not have the greatest reputation about this type of stuff, as Zach Brown has not been eager, let's say, to point out over the past couple of months. So it's definitely spicy between not just McLaren and Alpine, but also Alonso, right? Alonso in the Aston Martin. Hopefully Aston Martin have a reasonably competitive car, potentially up there with Alpine and McLaren, and then we get some really entertaining fights, not just between the Alpine drivers, between McLaren as well, and Piastri potentially, and then Alonso in the fight. Like, that is going to be a great midfield battle, hopefully next season, if their cars are any good. And one final thing to close out the video here with, quick update from Pirelli on the compounds for next year. You guys might well know that every weekend there are 5 slick tyre compounds. The C1, which is the hardest tyre, I believe, the C5, which is the softest tyre, and they choose going into the weekend which is going to be the hard, which is going to be the medium, which is going to be the soft. So, you know, one race it might be the C1, C2, C3 that's used, another race it might be the C3, C4, C5, and therefore the hard tyre from one weekend is then the soft tyre with the next weekend. Bit confusing, but it kind of works depending on the racetrack characteristics. Now, there's going to be, instead of just 5 compounds to choose from, so when they go to the weekend they choose, you know, 3 of those compounds to race with, instead of choosing those from 5, they're now going to choose them from 6. So the C1 tyre we had this year, which was rarely used but was used relatively well around circuits like Silverstone and Zandvoort as well, that's now going to be called the C0, and they're going to add another tyre, the C1, which is going to be an upgraded version effectively. So yeah, I don't know what they're thinking, to be honest, but there's now going to be 6 tyre compounds they can choose from. The C0 is still available, but the C1 is now like an upgraded C1, which is now called the C0. So I don't know anymore. I kind of missed the days where they used to have, you know, the super soft, the hyper soft, you know, the ultra hard or the super hard, whatever it was called, and it was an absolute mess. Like nowadays it's a bit clearer, but still, I mean, we're going C0 to C5, I guess. So, you know, fine. Cheers, Pirelli. Thanks for the help. Hit the like button if you enjoyed. Subscribe if you're new. Take care, and I'll see you next time.